Thank you everyone for joining our webinar today. My name is Dominic and I work with Amazon's Selling Partner App Store. As you may know, the App Store is a one-stop shop for our sellers to discover and enable more than 2,500 trusted apps to help you grow and manage your businesses. We are continuing our webinar series today with a presentation from our software partner, SellersFunding, on unlocking exponential e-commerce success on Amazon. Throughout the session, we encourage you to submit your questions through the questions tool, and we'll be answering them in a live Q&A session following the presentation. Should also note that there is a handout from SellersFunding in GoToWebinar, so if you want to click on that, download it. It has some helpful information about the different types of funding they offer, as well as how to get in touch with them. So without further ado, I now give the floor to Leo.
Thanks for joining us today. My name is Leonardo Filisberto, and I'm the head of business development for SellersFunding, a digital financial platform for Amazon sellers. As you can see on the screen, today's discussion will be focused on how you can unlock exponential growth and success on Amazon through funding. So during this presentation, we'll be covering a range of topics from why so many e-commerce businesses fail, how utilizing funding can fuel success regardless of the economic landscape, what SellersFunding has identified as the winning formula for financial growth, and share with you some examples of sellers just like you who have achieved success with the help of the right funding solutions. So with that, let's dive in. So in our experience in working with thousands of e-commerce businesses, there are a variety of reasons why a company may not achieve long-term success. It can sometimes be due to timing, lack of product market fit, or simply a flawed business model or poor execution. With each of these issues, a business can still survive for months or even years, but time and again, we see lack of cash flow being the primary culprit as to why so many startups fail. At the end, they simply run out of runway, and when they look for a lifeline, it's often too late. Now, even for sellers that get all of this, it's still not easy, and there's a lot to navigate. They face stiff competition, rising costs and fees, have to vigorously defend their listing and rank, need to understand policies that affect their products, amongst a whole list of other challenges. In order to navigate each of these impending hurdles, it's important to identify the right funding solution and partner, also a challenge in itself, to ensure your business is well capitalized and can turn these challenges into opportunities. So we'll spend the rest of our time covering how funding plays a critical role in the success of a business and offer some tangible takeaways to help fuel your business to the next level. So as we all know, for an e-commerce business, access to cash flow equals freedom. It means they are free to double down on what's working, invest in new ideas, expand into new regions, and just push the throttle where needed to drive growth. Now, conversely, lack of funding completely stifles a business. If cash is the lifeblood of a healthy business, not having a dependable funding source, whether it be internal or external, means depriving your business of the very oxygen that it needs to survive. To use the death by 1,000 cuts analogy, we often find that businesses that fail do so very gradually, and typically as a result of not acting or reacting to the environment around them. The inability to take advantage of opportunities, such as the ones that are shown on the slide, is either the result of poor management or having limited funds to deploy when needed. Now, the latter is what we're here to help solve for. So we've established why funding is a critical part of any business, but then why are there so many sellers that still don't see it as a tool in their toolkit? We took a survey of our clients to answer that exact question, and we grouped the responses into 3 buckets. First, lack of understanding, and we mean that both literally and figuratively. Literally, in the sense that folks just don't know where to start. They don't know how to go about seeking funding and what the best solution is for them. And figuratively, in the sense that people also think it's just not needed, right? So they're proud of their business, what they've achieved, that they've been able to bootstrap, and so they don't recognize or understand the value in using external capital to help them grow their business even further. The second is misbeliefs. So we often hear funding is very difficult to get, it requires perfect credit, and again, folks are traditionally thinking of banks or other traditional funding sources, but are also concerned that it may be too expensive, it can be predatory, and all of the other negative stigmas that come with debt. And lastly, it's what we call failure to launch. So trying to time it too perfectly, waiting too long to act, it's never the right time. And so to simplify all of this, we've come up with what we've dubbed the winning formula to empower sellers to confidently navigate the world of funding in order to give their business the best opportunity to succeed. So we'll be diving into each of these in greater detail in the coming slides, but basically it boils down to knowledge plus access plus purpose equals unlocking exponential success on Amazon. So first you educate yourself on how funding can be used, when to use it, and why. Then you ensure that you have the right access to funding. So choose the right partner and solution for your business needs. And lastly, use it with purpose. With the knowledge and understanding that you've gained, be empowered to take action and make moves that will drive growth for your business. So diving further into the formula, let's get started with the education component. So to illustrate, let's first review an example journey of an e-commerce seller. Now, we understand that every business is unique and your journey may look different, but I'm sure that you'll be able to draw some parallels. In the very early stages, it's all about the basics. Identify the product or products you want to sell, purchase inventory, and start selling it online. In order to do so, however, you're going to need some sort of startup capital just to get the wheels in motion. Now, as the product begins to perform and you develop better understanding of the marketplace, you increase advertising, streamline logistics, and focus on improving operations, all of which will require more cash. And eventually, you invest in more resources such as staff or other tools, even more capital intensive. Now, at this point, you've propelled your business through growth and hypergrowth stages, and you're now an established seller with predictable demand and sales. Once you've hit this mature stage, you're faced with a fork in the road. Continue gradually on this path into the horizon, or find a way to reinvent yourself, often by expanding into new markets or creating new product lines in order to accelerate growth even further. So now that we've established how funding plays a role at each stage of growth, we go into what is arguably the most important piece, the what. There's a wide variety of funding options available to sellers, so it's important to understand the mechanics and the implications of each one. So we start with credit cards. Now, as we know, this can be an expensive way to finance your business, and it's typically not suitable in the long run. From there, you may graduate to a daily advance, which allows for better cash flow management by providing daily liquidity. It provides sellers with quicker operational cash flow by not having to wait weeks to get paid out on their sales. A revenue advance or revenue-based financing provide a good shorter-term solution. So the way it works is that you receive a lump sum that typically has to be paid back in 3 to 6 months for a flat fee. You'll probably next graduate to term loans, which are longer dated, ranging from 12 months to 24 months typically, and allow for a longer repayment cycle and extends your cash runway. A credit limit or line of credit is a series of term loans. So you're approved for a max exposure limit and you can draw down as you see fit. Now, this provides greater flexibility by only using funds when you need it, and it also allows for multiple draws. Now, invoice factoring and PO financing are B2B solutions. So if you're selling on Vendor Central or to other retailers, it allows you to get paid quicker on your invoices. And lastly, ABL or asset-based lending allows you to use any parked inventory as collateral for a funding line, thereby freeing up cash tied up in that inventory you are waiting to sell. So now let's go back to that example journey where we can match the when and why we discussed earlier with the what. So again, when just getting started, businesses tend to use personal investment and personal credit cards to purchase inventory and get things off the ground. As momentum builds, a business can use the daily advance or commercial card to provide daily liquidity needed to operate. Advertising is an example of that, until a larger reserve is built. Once you hit the growth inflection, you'll need capital injections to not only meet the increased demand, but also invest in optimizing the business. This is where revenue advance or revenue-based financing could be a good fit. Term loans and credit limits are often best utilized for long-term investments, such as hiring staff, large inventory orders, or R&D/expansion efforts. Lastly, as you look to reinvent your business and look for new channels, invoice factoring and PO financing can be used when selling directly to a retailer or any other B2B transaction. In summary here, being educated on the when, why, and what of funding will completely change the way you go about managing your business. It can provide you with the financial freedom needed to graduate from each stage of the business lifecycle. The most important takeaway is understanding that funding is a strategic lever that, when used correctly, so right time, right solution, can be a game changer for your business. So now on to the second piece of the formula, gaining access to funding. So it's very important for sellers to know what their options are when it comes to finding the right funding partner. Just as you would shop around when looking for a mortgage or financial advisor, the same principle should also be applied for funding. So on the right-hand side of this page, we've put together an e-commerce funding partner checklist you can use to help identify the right partner for your business. There are 2 points on this list that I want to highlight. The first is finding a partner that specializes in Amazon and e-commerce, which is critical. We all know that the online business is varied and unique, which makes it harder for traditional funding providers to understand. A funding provider that specializes in this space will be comfortable with the nuances of your business and will have greater appetite to support you long-term. And the second point is flexible terms that work for your business. Find a partner that gives you flexibility so that you can stay agile and be in a better position to manage the ebbs and flows of your business. Now, this can come in the form of interest only or grace periods, no prepayment penalties, or the ability to make multiple draws. The key takeaways here: focus on establishing a relationship with one or more partners that will support you long-term. Know how to differentiate between lenders and partners. Lenders are purely there for the transaction, whereas a partner understands your business needs and goals and will work with you to achieve them. Second, look at funding options before you think you even need it. This will set you up for success when the time comes to take action. Okay, and lastly, once you have a better understanding of the why and how to use funding, and you've coupled that with the right type of funding partner, the last step is to act, borrow with purpose. So borrowing with purpose means using external funds strategically and with intention. Avoid borrowing for the wrong reasons, like your business is struggling to generate sales, or you have debt stacking up, and be empowered to take decisive action when it comes to funding for the right reasons, i.e. to keep up with demand, double down on proven ROI, expansion efforts for strong products. Trust in the plan that you've laid out for your business. We often come across sellers who understand the value of using funding and know the options available to them, yet fail to take necessary steps to use funding to scale their business to new heights. Now, the 2 charts on the right-hand side of the page speaks volumes to me. On top, you have a business that experiences linear growth. So they're mainly just reinvesting the retained earnings back into the business to drive growth in that steady line. Whilst the bottom chart, exponential growth, represents a business that is using a multitude of levers, including external funding, to accelerate their trajectory and grow at a much faster rate. In summation here, when to act is just as important as knowing when not to act. Know the difference. Trust your instincts. You're all entrepreneurs, so you're risk takers by nature. It's just a matter of taking the right risks, the ones that are calculated and purposeful. So with that, we're going to quickly shift gears here, guys, and bring on the founder of Kaffe, Robert, which is an Amazon online brand that's been working with SellersFunding, just to hear a little bit more about their journey. So with that, I welcome Robert. Robert, thank you for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. Great to share our story.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to give everyone a little bit of background on Kaffe, and I don't want to take Robert's thunder away, but again, they sell on Amazon US, Mexico, and Canada. They've been working with SellersFunding since April of 2022. And just to give you a glimpse of some of the results, they've had 150% year-over-year growth for holiday sales since working with SellersFunding, which is amazing. So congratulations on that success, Robert.
Thank you. Thank you.
So to start us off, just in your own words, can you tell us a little bit more about Kaffe and how you got started?
Yeah, so my Amazon journey goes back almost 10 years, I guess, but I really started selling FBA about 5-6 years ago with another brand of office products. That one thing led to another. I wanted to launch more of a home and kitchen brand that I could really get behind and understand. And so Kaffe was born mid 2019, so it's been about 3.5 years, going on 4 now. So now we have a hero product that is a coffee grinder. So that is a product that I first launched under the Kaffe brand, and now we have a line of different coffee grinders and different coffee products.
That's amazing, and congrats again on the success. It's been a pleasure to be a part of a little part of that journey.
Thank you.
And so for you, what would you say was the growth opportunity that triggered you looking for capital?
Yeah, sure. So I think for us, we had definitely tried different funding sources before. Not saying they all are terrible or anything. We, like you mentioned, there's different kinds. But at the time, this was earlier 2021, and so we didn't necessarily need the capital right away. Like one of those things, like you pointed out, it wasn't that we needed it the next day or we were debt piling up or anything like that, but we really saw the opportunity after a couple of years of with our hero product, and we saw that kind of more of a planned approach to taking this investment, where we're able to not only grow the inventory there to the appropriate levels, but also increase ad spend that we were seeing the appropriate ROIs in return. But as well as we were able to put deposits on some new models that we had been working on for a while, so like essentially lead us to the next phase of growth, while the majority of the investment went into the hero products, kind of doubling down.
Yeah, absolutely. Just going back to our formula, the education piece. Now it sounds like you were pretty familiar with it initially, but did you ever have any hesitations around funding, and kind of what got you over the hump and to the point where you knew that you needed help externally to continue to grow the business?
Yeah, certainly. So I could understand how some people are really scared of loans and debt and credit, and they certainly have that mindset. I come from a finance background, so I did understand kind of the opportunity cost of not taking lending if you were in a situation where you do need it. And so when SellersFunding came in, I did think that the terms were very fair. It's kind of like more of a partnership, like you were mentioning, rather than just a one-time transaction there. But yeah, it was just really a pretty good fit right at that time.
That's great. And you mentioned one thing. So last question for you. So you mentioned opportunity cost. So how has working with SellersFunding impacted your business?
Sure, yeah. So it's great to see it, finally paying off, like in intangible ways. So like, we took the investment early 2021. We already had 2 years under our belt with that hero product, strong holiday sales. But this year we really kind of took it to even another level. We were able to do our first $1 million month in December, essentially. So, with that now, allows us to really go further and deeper into the category that we really know, and turn this into a real business, as they say.
Phenomenal. No, I think you've definitely achieved that, Robert. So congratulations again, and thank you for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right, guys. So as you can see, over the years, SellersFunding has supported thousands of companies like Kaffe to maximize their potential and reach new heights. Here are 3 other unique examples of how SellersFunding worked with up-and-coming brands. So just to quickly run through a few, Hot Chocolate Design was a classic case of a brand being too successful too soon. They had a massive upturn in demand and struggled to keep up. SellersFunding was able to act fast to provide them with a facility that met their needs, and this allowed them to achieve a 60% year-over-year growth rate across their e-commerce channels. Drummond Gaming and Tech recognized demand for specific products and wanted to act fast to double down on their winners. So SellersFunding was able to come up with a solution that provided them with the added liquidity needed to focus on their highest margin products. As a result, net sales grew from 30% to 54%. And lastly, Deluxy, their main issue was related to cash flow timing. So they dealt with unpredictable payouts, which put a strain on cash flow. The daily advance was a perfect solution for them. It meant that they were never out of stock and had liquidity on a daily basis to reinvest in the business. So this brings us to the end of the presentation. In closing, if there's one thing that I hope all of you walk away with, it's the winning formula that's been discussed today. So just to recap, become educated, especially if you're not familiar with funding yet. Understand what it is and how it can be used to your benefit. Look at funding as a strategic lever. Then, ensure access. Create relationships with one or more partners that will set you up for success. Have everything lined up so it's ready when you need it. And lastly, borrow with purpose. Be confident, trust in yourself. You know what you're doing and you've gotten this far. So when it comes time, be ready and willing to act. And with that, you'll have all the keys needed to unlock exponential success on Amazon. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Leo. I thought that was a really insightful presentation, and just kind of going through all of the different types of funding out there, the pros and cons, and when it makes sense for each business. We have a ton of questions coming in. Thank you everyone so much for the thoughtful engagement here. There are a few around, basically, I just got started selling on Amazon, and I'm not sure if I qualify for funding. Do you have any thoughts on how they can get funds now, what they can do to qualify for those funds?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually a question we get a lot, right? And that's one of the amazing things about Amazon. I think you have everyone who, from, someone who's just starting out to, business that are doing tens or hundreds of millions of dollars worth of sales, right? For the businesses that are just starting out, as we had shown in the example journey, for us at Sellers Funding, we typically require just a minimum of 6 months selling history to qualify. In some cases, even less. And this is where, again, just make sure that you match the right product to the stage that you're in your business life cycle, right? So if you're just starting out, you're probably going to need that, daily operational cash flow just to keep things going and start to pick up on that growth rate. And this is where a daily advance solution would make sense for you. There's lower requirements in terms of, the amount of sales that you need to be generating and how long you'd have to be in business for. So the daily advance, I would say, and then really just following that, that journey. So kind of graduating to each step as your business continues to grow.
Curious if, for the sellers that want to learn more, kind of dive deeper into the subject, how can they be more educated about getting funding and using it?
Yeah, no, that's a question we get a lot too. And the way we try to position ourselves in the market is, as a true partner. So trying to handhold a lot of these sellers and understand what their options are in the market. So, I mean, please feel free to reach out to any one of us on the Sellers Funding side. Be happy to walk them through, what the options are and what we typically see depending on, where they are in the business stage of their life cycle.
Excellent. I have a question here from Darren. Can you tell me if any of these options are available to Canadian sellers?
They are, yes. I can say at least for Sellers Funding solutions, and most of the solutions that you saw up on the screen are solutions that Sellers Funding offers. And yes, Canada is a market that we do cover, so we do support a lot of Canadian-based sellers.
Excellent. And there's also a question here about just, I'd like to know if someone living out of the U.S. is also eligible for funding. If yes, what are the requirements for application? Is there any aside from Canada, what other markets are you active in, and how does that differ between marketplaces in terms of application?
Yeah. So just as a general rule of thumb, so the markets that we work with, and for us, we look at the entity and not so much, the director or the UBO of the company, right? So it's where that entity is domiciled. And so we operate in North America. So entities registered in the US, Canada, in the UK, as well as parts of continental Europe, as well on a case-by-case basis, and Australia. And we're adding more and more countries to our list, I'd say, every month, almost. So growing from there. But North America, UK, parts of Europe, and Australia for now. And yeah, the application process itself, just to answer that part of the question, is very straightforward. So again, it's a 5-minute application process. As soon as you submit an application, just connecting the token of your store, and then just basic information on the entity itself, you'll have one of our sales reps that'll reach out to you to handhold you through the rest of the process, answer any questions that you may have. So it's a very, very fluid process that we've structured.
Great. And then just some clarifying questions here about South Korea, India, Mexico. I didn't hear those listed. Are those not available on the horizon? What would you say to the sellers on the call who are from those marketplaces?
So yes, unfortunately not available as of yet. A couple of these countries mentioned are on our roadmap, but probably won't be the case until latter half of this year or early next year, if I'm being honest. But one way around that we've worked with a lot of companies is, depending on the markets that they sell in, if they have a registered entity, let's say in the UK or parts of Europe or parts of the US, they could potentially still qualify for funding. So it's still worth reaching out and having a conversation with a member of our team to see if we're able to help.
Great. We have a question here from Kareen. Says, how do I know if I'm qualified?
Very good question, Kareen. Again, also varies case by case, but our minimum requirements for the working capital is at least 6 months of trading history, right? So having sold for at least 6 months. The jurisdictional requirements that we had mentioned, right? So those specific countries. And then we do have a minimum sales volume. Typically, that's going to be anywhere between 10,000 to 20,000 a month in sales. But again, that's on the working capital side. The daily advance is a much lower kind of bar. For the daily advance, we help sellers that are doing 10,000 and below in monthly sales, and that have only been in business for 3 months. And typically, that's what we see is just them graduate, right? As the business scales, we're kind of there lockstep with them.
Great. I have a question here from Thomas. Do you have up to 4-year terms? For context, he said that there's a Amazon loan, but it's only for 12 months. So I'd be interested to hear different loan terms.
Yeah, I definitely don't want to get in trouble with my credit guys here, but I know they've gotten creative with deals. Again, all in the effort to support sellers. Typically and traditionally, our loans, so our term loan and our credit limit goes up to 24 months. So that's kind of our average. It's between 12 to 24 months, but there are exceptions to that rule.
Excellent. A few questions here. One from Oksana about should you be registered as a company to be qualified?
That's a very good question, and the answer is yes. So we currently do not work with individuals, sole traders, as of yet. So it does have to be a legal entity.
And does that legal entity, there's another question as well, have to be an LLC?
No, it doesn't. Does not.
Fantastic. There's a question here about, do you have an NDA before connecting to the account? How does that process look like from a legal and sharing point of view?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So obviously we do follow local market privacy laws. So that's all written within our terms and conditions. In terms of the data we pull from your store, as Dom had mentioned, we are an approved, verified Amazon technology partner, right? So we kind of go through that vetting process. So obviously we have permission, and we've been vetoed by or vetted, I should say, sorry, by Amazon with your permission to access that data. So everything is protected. Obviously, it's read-only, and we only use that information for the purposes of our analysis, right, for your application.
His business is 8 years old, imagine meets the criteria that you laid out, but they're just getting started on Amazon as a channel. Okay. What sorts of offerings are available there?
Yeah, so we are e-commerce across the board. So I'd say that first and foremost. So if you do sell on other channels, we will take those sales into consideration as well. I would even go a step further, and kind of at a discounted kind of percentage, we would probably even take a look at your retail sales, right? Which we kind of plot out to what that forecasted kind of sales is going to be on Amazon based on that. So that's just to say that there are a lot of different ways that we can work with you. So if you're someone who's already been in business for several years, just looking at Amazon as a new channel, which is great. Yeah, we have a lot of those cases.
Great. I have a question here from Rosalind about, will it affect your credit score, and is it a hard pull?
So no, it is not a hard pull. Basically what we do, it depends on the case and the loan amount as well. So for larger amounts, there are certain types of recourse that we do put in place. But in terms of just applying and seeing what you're eligible for, and even once you take the loan, it's not a hard pull.
We just had a few questions from different folks roll in about what is the timeline for processing the application from the moment that you start to the moment that you're ultimately approved and receive that funding.
Yeah, I think this is probably posted on probably every single SellersFunding employee's kind of desk, is just what our target turnaround time is, because we try to pride ourselves on that. But obviously it depends on a number of different factors, right? So the complexity of your business structure, the size of the loan, right? As you can imagine, bigger loans, so into the high 6 figures, 7 figures, 8 figures, that's a little bit more of an involved process. But on average, the turnaround time from application submitted to cash and bank account, for smaller loans is going to be anywhere between 48 to 72 hours, maybe slightly longer than that. And for larger loans, you're looking at, about a week's time, 1 to 2 weeks, kind of give or take, for again, the much larger loans.
Excellent, thank you. Unfortunately, we are out of time. So, there will be a survey that will be going out after the webinar. If you want to, you can share your contact information in that survey to be shared with SellersFunding following the webinar. Thank you so much, Leo, for the presentation today and sharing your knowledge on Funding 101, essentially unlocking exponential e-commerce success on Amazon.